Hello my fellow crocheters and welcome back to my channel. Are you guys getting a lot of rain and chill like I am over here? Because if you are, then you're in luck because today I'll be sharing with you this crochet sweater dress that is also perfect for leggings. This tutorial is made in the size medium but is easily adjustable if you follow the link to my blog down in the description below. And if you're new to my channel and you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe at the end of this tutorial and click that notification bell. For this project, I'll be using Caron Simply Soft yarn in the color Heather Gray. We'll need a 4.5mm hook and a 3.5mm hook, some stitch markers, measuring tape, a tapestry needle, and a pair of scissors. Let's grab our 4.5mm hook and we'll be working on our back panel first. We'll work up a slip knot. From here, you can grab your measuring tape and measure from the top of your shoulders all the way down to your mid-thigh or however long you would like your sweater to be, and work up your chains. I'm working on a size medium and I'm about 5 feet 3, so I've worked 105 chains in total. At the end of the chain, I'll chain 1 to turn. Now, on the next row, I'll insert my hook to the second chain from the hook and work 1 double crochet. For this row, I'll continue working 1 double crochet on each chain across, and I'll meet you back here at the end of this row. Once we've completed the first row, it should look like this. We'll chain 1 and turn our work. On this row, we'll be working on a new stitch. To be honest, I don't know the name of this stitch, but I'll be calling it the paddle stitch. First, we'll work 1 half double crochet on that first stitch. Now, we'll insert a hook through that first stitch we worked on earlier, drop a loop, we'll skip the next stitch, yarn over, and we'll insert a hook through the next stitch after that. We'll insert a hook and drop a loop. Now we'll have 5 loops on our hook and we'll pull through all loops. So this will be like a half double crochet 2 together, but instead of the first and second stitch, we'll half double crochet the first and third stitch together. Now we'll go back to the previous unworked stitch, yarn over, we'll skip the next stitch and insert a hook through the following stitch. Drop a loop. We'll have 5 loops on our hook and we'll pull through all loops together. If you happen to know the name of the stitch, please do drop me a comment below. I'll be happy to finally figure out the name of the stitch. Now let's work on this stitch one more time. We'll yarn over, insert a hook through that previous stitch. We'll skip the next stitch, yarn over, insert a hook through the following stitch, yarn over, and pull through all loops. Now we'll be repeating this stitch for the rest of this row, and I'll meet you back here once that's done. Once we've reached that last stitch, we'll repeat the same process of working the previous stitch and the front stitch together. Pull through all loops, and finally we'll work 1 half double crochet on that last stitch. We'll chain 1, and this is how our paddle stitch looks like. This is the front and this is the back. It's super textured and it has a little bit of a puff to it. Now we'll work the same paddle stitch again on the third row. So we'll always start with 1 half double crochet on the first stitch, and we'll half double crochet the first and third stitch together, pull through all loops, yarn over, we'll go back to the previous stitch, skip a stitch, and insert a hook through the following stitch and pull through all loops together. And since you already know how to do this stitch, you'll just continue this stitch all the way across, and I'll meet you back here at the end of this row. Now let's work on that last stitch again. We'll yarn over, insert a hook to that previous stitch and the last stitch. We'll pull through all loops, yarn over, and work 1 half double crochet on that last stitch. So here we have 3 rows, and this is the 3 rows which we will be repeating throughout the entire body panel. You'll want to measure from shoulder to shoulder the width that you would require. 2 rows is equivalent to about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. We'll continue working 1 row of double crochet stitches and 2 rows of paddle stitches. I'm working on a size medium, so I'll be working a total of 35 rows. Continue working on your total width of the body panel, and I'll meet you back here once that's all done. Once you've completed all your rows for the back panel, it should look something like this. Now let's work on the front panel. We'll work a slip knot, and we'll work the same number of chains as we did for the back panel, but minus 10 chains, because the front panel will be slightly shorter than the back panel. Once we've completed our chains, we'll chain 1, yarn over, and from the second chain from the hook, we'll work that double crochet stitch. Continue working double crochet stitches across, followed by 2 rows of paddle stitches, and repeat these 3 rows for a total of 10 rows or until you've reached your preferred strap width, and I'll meet you back here once that's done. Once you've completed one side of your strap, it should look something like this. Now we'll turn our work to the side, and we'll place a stitch marker on the 14th stitch from the top. So this will mark the start of our decrease for our neckline. Now let's continue to stitch across until we reach the stitch marker. Once you've reached that last 2 stitches, and if you're working on a double crochet stitch, you'll just work a regular double crochet 2 together. So you'll yarn over, insert your hook, drop a loop, pull through 2, and you do that again for the second stitch, yarn over and pull through all loops. Chain 1, and we'll turn our work. If you're working on a paddle stitch, this is how you'll reduce for the paddle stitch row. Instead of working your regular 1 half double crochet on that first stitch, we'll remove that 1 half double crochet and jump straight into working on the first and third stitch together. And you continue working on this paddle stitch all the way across and on the following row, and I'll meet you back here on the last stitch of the next row. Here on our last stitch of the 3rd row, I'll show you how to do the decrease again. We'll work the back and the front stitch together, and we will not be working on that last half double crochet. We'll just chain 1 and turn our work. So here we have our decrease rows. Now you'll want to continue to decrease for a total of 7 rows, but for the size medium. You'll be able to get the other sizes on my blog. The link is down in the description below. And just repeat the previous 3 rows decrease, and I'll meet you back here once that's done. Now this is how the decrease neckline should look like. Once we've completed all the decrease rows, we'll chain 1, and on the next row, we'll be working on the increase stitches. So here I'll be working on my paddle stitch row, and what I'll do is I'll work 2 half double crochets on that first stitch. That will be my increase stitch. And I will continue working on the paddle stitch for the remaining stitches, and I'll meet you back here on the last stitch of the next row. Here I've just completed my double crochet row, and here I have 1 more stitch left. On this last stitch, I'll be working 2 double crochet stitches to increase my row. 1 and 2. And if you like, you can place a stitch marker to mark the center of your neckline. Chain 1, we'll turn our work, and the next row will be a petal stitch increase. So I'll work 2 half double crochets on that first stitch, and then I'll repeat my petal stitch all the way across. Now we'll repeat the same number of rows as we did on the decrease side, and I'll meet you back here to make the straps. Now that we've completed our neckline, we'll be working on the straps. On our last strap, we place a stitch marker on the 14th stitch. So now we'll work 14 chains and a turning chain. Now depending on our last stitch, this is a petal stitch. This row will also be the second petal stitch that we'll be working on. So we'll work 1 half double crochet and our petal stitch all the way across this chain. Once we've completed the stitches on the chain, referring back to the other strap, we'll want to work the same number of rows on this side as well. Once you've completed your strap, this is how the finished front panel should look like. Now let's get ready to work on the sleeves. We'll get our 3.5mm hook and we'll work a slip knot. We'll measure from the top of our shoulder all the way down to our wrist and work the number of chains required for the length of our arm. Here I am working 81 chains. Once we've completed our chain, we'll chain 1 to turn, and on that first stitch we'll work 1 single crochet and continue to work 1 single crochet for 30 stitches. Once we've completed 30 stitches, we'll place a stitch marker. We'll remove our 3.5mm hook and we'll take our 4.5mm hook, and on this row we'll work double crochet stitches on each stitch across. And this is how the first row should look like. The bottom being the cuffs. Now we'll be repeating 1 double crochet rows and 2 petal stitch rows, just like we did on the front and back body panel. We'll work a half double crochet on the first stitch and we'll work the petal stitch on the first and third stitch and continue to do this until we reach the stitch marker. Now on that last stitch, we'll work 1 half double crochet, we'll switch hook, and on that first single crochet stitch that we did earlier, we'll work a single crochet through the back loop only. So this will be the loop furthest away from you. We'll insert a hook through that back loop and work a single crochet. Do this till the end of the row. On that last stitch, chain 1, we'll turn our work and we'll do the exact same thing by working the single crochet stitch through the back loop until we reach the stitch marker. Once we reach the stitch marker, we'll switch hooks, and on this third row, we'll work another row of petal stitches. So we'll put our stitch marker back, and on that first stitch, we've already made a half double crochet stitch and continue to work the petal stitch all the way across. We'll repeat these 3 rows for a total of 30 rows. and I'll meet you back here once that's done. This is how our finished sleeves should look like. On that last stitch, you do not need to bind off, but once you're done, just fold your sleeve lengthwise like this. We'll take our 3.5mm hook and we'll insert our hook through that first stitch on both sides of the cuff. We'll pick up our yarn, draw up a loop, we'll chain one to secure. Now we'll align both pieces together. We'll insert a hook through that first stitch again and work a single crochet. Do this for each stitch across and single crochet all the way through. On the last stitch, just chain one to secure and snip off your yarn. And this is how your complete sleeve should look like. Now we'll repeat the whole process again and make a second sleeve. Now we'll be seaming the front and back body panel together. With a measuring tape, measure the length of the armhole. For size M, it would be 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. Next, we'll be seaming up the sleeves. With our 3.5mm hook, align the front and back panel together and insert your hook through the first stitch of the front and back panel. Drop a loop, chain one to secure, and through that first stitch, we'll work a single crochet and continue to work single crochet stitches along the straps. On the last stitch of the strap, we'll just chain one to secure and bind off. Now you do the exact same thing on the other side. Once we've completed the straps, we'll now move on to seaming the sides. We'll align the top and bottom together, and as you can see here, we have 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters of the back panel showing. We'll want to take a measuring tape and place a stitch marker 3 inches above the front panel. We'll do this on both sides. Now we'll get our 3.5mm hook and we'll prepare to seam the sides. From the first stitch marker, we'll insert our hook, draw up a loop, and just like before, we'll chain one and single crochet each stitch of both panels together all the way across until we reach the next stitch marker. And once you've completed this side, go ahead and finish seaming the other side. And this is how your finished body panel should look like. Now we'll be attaching the sleeves. Keeping your body panel on the wrong side, we'll take our sleeve and turn it inside out. So make sure you fold the sleeves with the seam placed at the bottom. And now we'll insert our sleeves in between the front and back body panel through the armhole, like so. It should fit perfectly. And we can place the stitch marker around the armhole just to secure. We'll take our 3.5mm hook You can insert your hook anywhere at the top or at the bottom, whichever way you prefer. We'll insert a hook through both pieces together, just like before. Draw up a loop. We'll chain 1 to secure. And we'll single crochet each piece together all the way in the round. And I'll meet you back here once that's done. Once we've completed the stitch and around, on that last stitch, we'll work a slip stitch through that first stitch to join, chain 1 to secure, and bind off. And if you turn your work around, it should look something like this. Now let's do the same thing all over again on the other side. Now the last thing we need to do is tidy up the neckline. Through the side, we'll draw up a loop, and with our 4.5mm hook, we'll chain 1, and we'll work a double crochet stitch on each stitch. Once we've reached at the bottom of the neckline, which is the row side, you'll work double crochet stitches evenly across the rows, like so. Continue doing this in the round, and I'll meet you back here to close up this round. On that last stitch, find that first stitch you made earlier and work a slip stitch, chain 1 to secure, and bind off. And there you go, you've just finished your sweater dress. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you so much for crocheting with me. I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video, and if you haven't done so already, do subscribe, and if you like my videos, do give it a thumbs up. Bye guys!